Hi there, my name's Jeremy Corrigan, and this is We Remember. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, we hear from local veterans, the Prince George Legion, and dive into the history of the poppy on the day we remember the people who sacrificed so we could live our lives the way that we do. At this moment, there are over 40,000 Canadians serving in the armed forces, either at home or abroad in the countless missions Canada is helping or leading across the world. Now it's time to hear from a very special member from right here in Prince George who is overseas.
My name is DEPENAU. I'm a captain in the Canadian Armed Forces. I serve with the Rocky Mountain Rangers in the Primary Reserve, and I'm currently deployed on Operation Impact.
DEPENAU won't be at home this Remembrance Day, but when he is home and not deployed with the Canadian Armed Forces, he typically spends his time here in Prince George working locally. Right now, he's on Operation Impact, along with 850 other Canadians working in the Middle East. DEPENAU is there as the Diplomatic Administration Officer in charge of visas, passports, and other immigration documents for countries in the Middle East where Canada is helping out.
I chose to serve because we have one lifetime. We have one short opportunity to do all we can to make this place better than we found it. Of course, service comes with challenges. I think back to my family, to my one-year-old at home, but the belief that we can really do something here, that we're part of something no different than those that have came before us that we remember today, that's really what sustains me until we can get back and see everyone at home again.
Thousands of kilometers away from BC's northern capital, this is far from the first time DEPENAU has served abroad. Plenty of memories stand out for the Rocky Mountain Ranger, but few stand out like what DEPENAU helped out with recently.
I've had some incredible opportunities in my career to go places, to do different courses, but what comes back to me all the time are just the people that I've had the chance to work with. Hearing their stories, their hope for the future, whatever it is, it's always the people. Absolutely, and most recently we had the opportunity to help contribute to the evacuation of families from Afghanistan and to speak with those evacuees, to be there on the tarmac as they enter the plane to start a new life. That's pretty incredible. I think that'll stay with me forever.
As for what you should be thinking about this Remembrance Day,
for myself personally, I always go back to armistice, to the end of the Great War. I think about just the enormity of the potential lost in war and conflict. From that date forward to now, I think about those that have gone before us and alongside us. I thank them for their contributions, and we really reaffirm our commitment to a greater peace, that we will remember them, that it won't be for naught, and so at the going down of the sun, we will remember them.
For those who have served and continue to serve, lest we forget.
Remembrance Day is a chance for people around the world to reflect on the sacrifices men and women have made to ensure our freedoms. One veteran of the British Royal Navy has settled here in Prince George after 2 decades of service and took the time to reflect on his experiences with our very own Anthony COREA.
For veterans all around the world, November 11th is a time to remember.
The poppy, obviously Remembrance. The poppy is everyone I've known that I've served with, the guys that died, the girls that died. It's the veterans in the graveyard. It's my grandfathers that were both World War II veterans. It's my cousin who died in Falklands.
But for Joe Elliott, a veteran of the British Royal Navy, Remembrance Day isn't a holiday, but rather a time to remember veterans.
For a start, I wouldn't call it a holiday. Here in Canada, Canadians, and I say I'm a Canadian citizen, we respect the day of November 11th.
He first joined the Navy when he was only 18. Elliott spent 22 years in the Navy, and it's an experience he'll never forget.
The sea was always my calling, and I was lucky enough to travel the world, and I have done. I've done 46 countries. I've seen some fantastic sights. Yes, I've been to war, but in conflicts, but there's a lot of good out there as well, and it was a good career. 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off, and you could be doing that for months at a time. You don't know, after a week of that, you had no idea what day it is. You've no idea what time it is. You're just working, sleeping, eating, working, sleeping, eating. But that preps you for when you're in a conflict zone and when you're needed.
He's been awarded multiple medals that have shown his service and really helped define him as a retired veteran.
I got my service medals from the Royal Navy, and this is also I got awarded the Order of St George of Canada from fellow veterans for my veterans advocacy work. But this is basically my time in the Royal Navy. It was all here.
Currently, Elliot is living with his family and loves telling his daughters about the past, and they love listening.
They've heard them all. Well, my daughters here are 7, 5 and 4.5 months. So the 4.5 month one hasn't heard them all yet, but the others have. Well, the edited versions anyway. I try not to swear too much. But there's a lot of good stories as well. There's a lot of good times. I'm still in touch with a lot of those sailors that I served with, even the guys that I joined up with 35 years ago, 36 years ago.
However, he wants to remind people that if you ever see a veteran and it looks like they're struggling, often just asking them to talk can brighten their day.
And some of those veterans get PTSD, and their families as well. So if they're a bit funny, if they're a bit quieter, ask them how they're doing. Take them for a coffee, talk to them. You see a veteran, if they want to talk to you about it, they'll talk to you.
Indigenous veterans have demonstrated time and time again their great service and sacrifice for Canada. Those who choose to volunteer overcame cultural challenges and made major sacrifices and contributions to help Canadians in its efforts to restore peace.
Dakota Williams served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 8 years.
I was a bombardier in the Royal Canadian Artillery. I served in the 5th Canadian Support Base and the Artillery School at W Battery Advanced Tactics Group.
According to Forces.ca, over 1,200 First Nations, Inuit and Métis Canadians served with the Canadian Forces at home and overseas. Williams says he decided to join because he felt it was his calling.
I felt I always had a higher purpose, a higher calling, where I have this need that to serve mankind, our collective species. And it's very obvious that we're on a planet of darkness longing for light. And it's our responsibility as survivors of residential school and genocide that we must heal collectively as one, because we're all rising as one.
Even though Williams faced many challenges, including racism, he says he still loved what he did.
And my last 5 years was a forward observer in the artillery. So as a forward observer, we are the ones that control the artillery fire for all the front line. And so we work with the ground force commander, and we provide support to all frontline troops, that's armored and infantry. And so as a forward observer, we roll with the infantry guys, and it's a really cool job because you're given a lot of power as an individual.
Williams says joining the Canadian Armed Forces was the best thing for him. It helped him heal, it helped him grow, and gave him the opportunity to teach others about his culture.
I learned a lot. I was challenged a lot, and I challenged myself a lot in the Army. And I've endured stuff you'll never experience in the civilian world. And I've got some pretty cool training and experiences. And I had a really badass job, to be realistic. It doesn't matter what your background is. The Army is, it is the place where you could become your highest self. Because you feel so alive when you're living on the razor's edge, the dagger's edge, when death could be just around the corner. And it's just your brothers to your left, your sisters to your right, and you have one purpose. And it was a really simple life for sure.
He encourages anyone to join the Army. In fact, he would like to create an Indigenous peacekeeping battalion in the future.
First Nations, we never consented to be Canadian. We were just here. And Canada was born on our territory, on unceded First Nations land. So something like 97% of all British Columbia is unceded territory, which means we never gave up governance. We never were conquered. We never gave up policy for our lands. But we still served as brothers and sisters in all of Canada's wars since before Canada became into being. We fought the Americans with Canadians, we fought the Germans with Canadians, we fought the Italians through the World War I, World War II. We fought in the Korean War, we fought the North Koreans with Canadians. And I feel it's time we have our own organization where we could be our own First Nation Rangers or Defense Force, Homeland Defense, or whatever the title we might come up with, so that we could deploy as ourselves on humanitarian missions across wherever it might be needed. Like we talked about earlier, Yemen, where since 2018, 48,000 children have passed away in famine. That's 50 kids per day. Here in Canada, we found now 7,000 children behind schools, they were called. This is the only country in the world where the alumni are survivors and not graduates.
Coming up next on We Remember, we hear from our very own Legion 43 and hear all about the history of the poppy after the break. Welcome back. Legion 43 has been home to veterans as a place where they can spend time with others alike who dedicated their lives for us. But it's also a place where veterans can interact with the people they fought for. For 95 years, the Legion has served as a place to share experiences and a place to create new memories.
My family are vets, and something I wanted to do.
It's been a home for veterans for almost a century.
And I'm enjoying it. I enjoy the vets here. I enjoy the people that come in here. It's helping them.
For 95 years, Legion 43 has served not only as a place for veterans to be with each other, but as a welcoming center for the public to learn more from those who fought for their freedoms.
Yes, anybody can come in, and of course we have a liquor license, so anybody can come in. And we have the bar and we have the kitchen, and they can come in and enjoy themselves, get to know the atmosphere of the Legion.
COVID has changed everything. The people weren't able to congregate as they used to. The memories created that filled this room came to a halt.
Right now we can't do the mingling, but before the COVID, people could go around, talk to anybody they wanted to, sit and have beer or a drink or whatever they wanted with them, and they had fun doing that.
But as the world slowly returns to normal, the Legion is following suit.
Talk to people, it's that basically, trying to get all this back together again. Have fun. Come down, meet some new people, bring your family in. We have pancake breakfast Saturday morning. Come on down. Things like that. We've got our restaurant open. We've got a fabulous cook.
But the Legion is more than just a gathering place. After their sacrifices, the veterans still find ways to give back.
We have dances, we have those kind of occasions. We also go to the park once in a while and do special events. We attend lots of the special events, and of course we have Remembrance Day, which is our big one every year.
It's a place to make memories, help veterans, and give back to the community. And Legion 43 is going to continue to do that for the next 95 years.
Here's to another 95, yes, we want to have that happen.
On the last Friday of October until November 11th, Canadians sport a poppy on their lapels. The poppy has become the symbol of Remembrance Day, and that symbol was born 100 years ago.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row.
It's the iconic symbol of remembrance, the poppy. But the poppy got its start from a poem written by a Canadian, Dr. John McCrae.
He was serving on the Western Front in 1915. The 1st Canadian Division was in the area around the town of Ypres in Belgium. And McCrae had, of course, the Second Battle of Ypres. So Ypres was raging late April 1915 and into May. McCrae had been working as a surgeon, and what people may not remember or know is that McCrae was also an artilleryman. He served in the Boer War as an artilleryman, and he was actually second in command of the 1st Canadian Artillery Brigade.
That mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly.
And this is the 100th anniversary of the poem, inked on a scrap of paper following the funeral of McCrae's friend, Alexis Helmer.
but the poem in his own lifetime was famous throughout the Allied countries. And so that poppy image became iconic even during the Great War. It was published in a very popular British magazine at the time called Punch in December 1915, and Punch would have been very well read throughout the Commonwealth.
The poppy became the symbol of war even while World War I still raged. A woman by the name of Anna Guerin saw the poppy as a way to help those devastated by war.
She was trying to raise money for French veterans and also for the widows and orphans from the war. And so the poppy, selling these poppies was a way of generating funds. She became known as the Poppy Lady from France and was invited to the American Legion Convention in 1920, who along with Moina Michael really championed the cause as a poppy as a symbol of remembrance.
Well after it was recognized in France and the United States, the poppy became the symbol in Canada.
We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow.
Precursor to the Royal Canadian Legion and their convention in 1921 adopted the poppy. So it was the Great War Veterans Association at the time, and they met in Thunder Bay or Port Arthur back then. And they resolved to adopt the poppy in July 1921 as the symbol of remembrance. And the rest is history, as we say.
The poppy has taken on many different incarnations over the years, but it will always act as a symbol of the hardship thousands underwent in world wars to protect our freedoms, lest we forget.
We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Coming up next on We Remember, we hear the story of a lacrosse trainer who made the ultimate sacrifice. More after the break. A former Prince George lacrosse player shares with us a story that he commonly shares every Remembrance Day. A lacrosse team's trainer that made the ultimate sacrifice, and that is of John Jocko Vincent.
The more and more we move forward, the harder it gets to remember the stories of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. But thankfully, there are people who spend time digging deep into archives and completing their own research to bring stories of heroes back to the surface. Dave Stewart Candy used to commute to Prince George to play lacrosse. He's heavily involved in the game to the point he's on the Board of Governors for the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Each Remembrance Day, he circulates the story of John Jocko Vincent.
He was a trainer. He was with the Vancouver Athletic Club, and they had a lacrosse team. They did all kinds of athletics, but around 1910 to about 1913, they assembled a really powerful lacrosse team, and they were amateur. They weren't a pro team, and they actually were sort of the first Mann Cup dynasty team.
The Vancouver Athletic Club held the Mann Cup for about 3 years up until the team then broke up, with players heading off to war.
Jocko Vincent, he was a trainer. Now, trainers you don't usually hear much news about, but I noticed during my time researching his team and seeing photographs, he always appeared in the team photo. So I kind of started searching to see if there's anything about him.
What Stewart Candy discovered was newspaper clippings about Jocko's death. He ended up enlisting just days after the war broke out and was wounded, recovered, returned to the front line, and later killed in action in 1916. But not before he wrote some poetry about his experiences in the military and in the trenches that got published in England.
So I kind of just started digging, and I found some biographical material about him, and it kind of seemed like it was almost like a rabbit hole. Like the more what little you could find out about the guy, kind of was like, wow, I want to find out more. Like I found out he was from Australia, and he'd stowed away on a ship when he was probably in his late teens, and he ended up in the Boer War in South Africa around the turn of the century, and he was a bugler there. And then sometime between then and about 1910, he found his way to Nanaimo and then Vancouver. And he, I guess through his athletic abilities or whatever, he got connected with the Vancouver Athletic Club and then somehow to the lacrosse team.
The more Stewart Candy uncovered, the more intrigued he became in unraveling more.
It's just fascinating. And I find as a researcher and historian, I connect with a lot of these players because a lot of them have been forgotten. And it's almost like the more you research and learn about them, it's almost like you start to know them.
According to Stuart Candy, approximately 2,000 lacrosse players enlisted or were called up during the First World War from across Canada. New Westminster Salmon Bellies saw something like 12 to 14 of their players at the senior and professional level end up in the military ranks. Thankfully, all those Salmon Bellies returned home, although some were wounded in action but did manage to return to play.
We have to make sure that these people are not forgotten because Vincent is somebody who has been forgotten. He had no family. He had a brother and a half brother and a father in Australia. But as far as I know, he was never married. He had no offspring. So his story, pretty much before I kind of dug it up again, the only memory of it would be the gravestone, the lonely gravestone in Belgium where he's interred. So I feel it's now that we're seeing our veterans that have been in these major conflicts, they need to be remembered for future generations because, they just say you learn from history, right? And if you forget it, then you're doomed to repeat yourself.
Coming up next on We Remember, we hear how books share both the history and experience of war. The story after the break. Books play a role in everyone's life. They can introduce them to a world of imagination and provide knowledge of stories from the past. Many books can share the experiences of war and help us remember those who fought for our freedom.
Row on row of books fill the bookshelves at the library, each with its take on warfare.
There's probably always go-to titles that you can refer people to, that they're always safe bets, but I think where librarians really shine is our depth of understanding of the collection is we can kind of pull out that rare gem that maybe a lot of people haven't appreciated. And so I do have a couple of titles here that our staff highly recommends, and I can explain why they're good. But the important message for everybody is that there's so much more available in our collections, and that if you want any assistance diving into the catalog to see what we offer, our staff, not only can they help you do that, but they love doing that. That's why they chose this profession.
Several themes are available regarding warfare. Therefore, it's best to have direction and a topic.
So we have the soldier's experience, we have a nurse's experience on the front lines, we have the experience of civilians who are trying to kind of maintain some sense of normality in their everyday life and preserve art, the beautiful things that make us want to keep living, and in theory why we fight wars, to defend some idea.
The book, After the War, written from the perspective of a Canadian soldier, details the conflict he experienced in Somalia.
He wants you to understand why he, as a soldier, when he came back to Canada, why it was so difficult for him to readjust, right? Because he had PTSD, right? The trauma of war. And the way he describes it is that your moral compass, when you're in war and you see things that are horrible that you can't in any way rationalize, you have to adjust your moral compass to make sense of the world. And then when you return to civilian life, you have to once again recalibrate that moral compass.
For those who love military history, there is always the book Margaret MacDonald, Imperial Daughter.
Margaret MacDonald, she's from Nova Scotia. We're talking about late 1800s. She decides to leave Nova Scotia because she wants to go on an adventure. She becomes a military nurse, serves in the Boer campaign, the Spanish-American War, and in World War I. And so as a result, she's had firsthand exposure to the trauma of war. And at the time that war was also modernizing, battlefield medicine had to change as well to meet the challenges of the time. And so she played a pivotal role in professionalizing military nursing.
Reading books about war can open the doorway to infinite ideas. It also gives you time to reflect on those who fought in a war to protect the freedoms we enjoy today.
Thanks for joining us for our Remembrance Day special, We Remember. Today marks a day where we look back and say thank you to the men and women who fought for our way of life. A day which we will always remember.